Arsenal, one of those clubs, a bit like Manchester United, where every day there's 100 transfer stories, there's 100 players linked to them, and a lot of it is a load of rubbish. You get your chases, you get your footy insiders, a lot of reliable sources like Arsenal, Man United. Let's use them for clicks. But we're getting quite a bit of credible transfer information coming in regards to Arsenal's plans. Now, first of all, Andrea Berta has been confirmed today, Arsenal director of football replacing Edu. We also know from every reliable source under the sun, and I don't think it would take a genius to tell you this, that Arsenal wants a striker. And as you saw on my screen a second ago, Sesko, Gyokeres, Isak. They are three of the striker names linked to Arsenal. And I'm going to tell you this now, Arsenal fans, you won't sign Isak. I'm a Manchester United fan, so I know a lot of you will be annoyed at me for saying that. But in a non-biased opinion, because one, I wouldn't want you to sign Isak because he's unreal, and I don't want Arsenal to do well, believe it or not, because I support Man United and I don't like you guys. But I don't think he's leaving Newcastle. I think it's 150 million. I don't think he's leaving Newcastle. I think if we're going to sign a striker, it's going to be Gyokeres, it's going to be Sesko, or it's going to be one or two names. And I think it's going to be Gyokeres after what David Ornstein has revealed today. So in today's video, I'm going to break down everything you need to know in regards to Andrea Berta's transfer plans to Arsenal, what we know from David Ornstein's, Fabrizio Romano's reliable sources on Arsenal's transfer plans, who they're currently in talks with, Zubimendi, Gyokeres, who is that winger? Is it Nico Williams? Could they be looking at someone else? Naipan, but also a bit about Andrea Berta and what he brings. So I want to do a breakdown of Arsenal's transfer plans, and all I'm going to say is this: I am jealous. If you sign these players that you were reportedly going to sign, a top striker, a top winger, Zubimendi, I will be very jealous as a United fan, on top of bringing someone like Naipan in. I'm not going to lie. And a big reason behind that jealousy is 2 seasons ago, I was desperate for United to sign Timber. He went to Arsenal. Last season, I thought Calafiori would have been a really good signing for Manchester United. He went to Arsenal. And there's one player, and if you watch my Man United channel, Alice Talks Football, I talk about this guy every day, Victor Gyokeres. If there's one player I want to see at Manchester United more than anybody else, and this isn't just because he was under Ruben Amorim, but look at Højlund, we need a proven goal scorer even more than you guys do. If this guy goes to Arsenal. If this guy goes to Arsenal, I'm going to be devastated. This is my dream signing. David Ornstein said this: Arsenal developing strong interest in Victor Gyokeres as possible striker signing. Andrea Berta, firm admirer of the 26-year-old sporting forward and expected to figure prominently among Arsenal's options, may be more realistic than Isak. Well, I think David Ornstein is stating the obvious with the last bit. As I said, I don't think Arsenal are going to get Isak. And that's why, I do transfer news videos on this channel, but I haven't done much Arsenal transfer news content. I don't think I've done any since the summer, because a lot of it is waffle. But today we're starting to get an idea of what Arsenal might do with Andrea Berta coming in. And I think Gyokeres is someone that you could bring in. Andrea Berta was confirmed. And before I talk about Gyokeres and why it's going to be an unbelievable signing for Arsenal, I want to talk about Andrea Berta, what he's going to bring to Arsenal, and outline sort of his transfer plan. So first of all, he was the key architect behind Atletico Madrid's most successful era. 2 La Liga titles, Europa League, Copa del Rey, 2 UEFA Super Cups, and was so unlucky not to win a Champions League. But you know what Real Madrid are like in those Champions League finals. Griezmann, it was like less than 30 million euros, was a global star. Won Oblak for 16 million euros. João Felix was his only miss, I would say, 126 million euros, who was meant to be a marquee signing, and he didn't end up being a marquee signing. João Felix was the miss, but I read some insight to say that actually he didn't want João Felix, and he had nothing to do with the João Felix deal. But if you look at Antoine Griezmann, you look at Juan Oblak, that's an example of 2 of his signings. João Felix was his biggest flop. He's kept Atletico competitive, and they had a big budget, they spent money, but not compared to Real Madrid or Barcelona. He was very good at maximising the return on investment. He had a lot of sustainable transfers. He prioritised long-term transfers over squad balance and short-term splurges. He was thinking about it. One thing, me being a Manchester United fan, I'll tell you one thing that annoys me about Man United is that we will then spend a lot of money on players that we might need in that moment, or we feel we need in that moment, but actually in 2 years' time we're thinking, why did we do that? What a waste. Sell them. Casemiro, 70 million on a player that we got one unreal season out of him, but long term he was never going to be in the plan. You've got someone there that's sustainable. He's smart. He built squads that perfectly align with Diego Simeone's system: compact, intense, disciplined. He was known for maintaining harmony between coaching staff, recruitment, keeping everyone in a good place. And I think that's really important for not squad morale, but work morale, which can impact squad morale. Good extensive scouting network, particularly South America and Europe. and is always looking at rising stars. And also he's happy to go big on a player, big on a striker, big on a proven player. So let's talk about Arsenal's summer transfer plan. What do we know now? Andrea Berta is in the door about Arsenal's summer transfer plan, because I think there's going to be more insight into what Arsenal are going to do. And I don't think it would take a genius to guess this, but I will say this. I feel like Arsenal in the past, you'd know they'd really need a DM for like 2 summers in a row, and they'd never sign a DM. Whereas I feel like Arsenal in recent years, you know they need a striker, you know they're going to sign a striker, you know they need a Partey and Jorginho replacement, you know they're going to do that. So obviously they're going to sign a striker, firepower, clinical finisher. That's their priority. They're also going to sign a midfielder that's going to partner Rice and replace Jorginho and Partey. That's basically Zubimendi, but there is always, it's not 100% done, but it's like 99% done. Do you know what I mean? And a winger. They want someone that can start left wing, but also has the versatility to play right wing. They need someone that's a threat on transition. There's obviously the constant Nico Williams links, but there's somebody else I want to talk about as well that I don't know, because I think like you could get Nico Williams, but I don't think it's as nailed on as certain media tries. And then I think because you might need a left 8, maybe a Naipan type player as well. So let's talk about Gyokeres. Now, Gyokeres looks like he could be the striker you're going to bring in. I think it's Gyokeres or Sesko. I think with Andrea Berta coming in, Gyokeres is a very Andrea Berta signing. He likes to go into the Portuguese league, get a big striker, get a goal scorer. And 58 million release clause on Gyokeres. Sesko is going to be around the same price. And when I look at Arsenal, if everybody stays fit next season, you sign a top striker, a good winger, and another midfielder, which is Zubimendi, which I still think you maybe need an 8 for creativity, like a progressive passer, but maybe Skelly can go there. Lewis Skelly can go there. I think you can win the league. I think Man City will need another rebuilding year. I think if Liverpool, they're going to lose Trent, they could lose Salah, they could lose Van Dijk. They also need a striker as well, because I don't know if Salah will perform at the level he did next season. Like, that would be ridiculous. You know, he'd still be good next season, but like this level, I seriously believe Arsenal can win the league next season with the right signings. And I think Sesko is a bit of a risk because he's not a proven scorer, but he could be in the future. But I think when you've got Arsenal squad right now and you're thinking, well, City probably need another year to adapt. You know, Liverpool, there's going to be a little bit of work to do in the summer for Liverpool, despite them winning the league and being amazing. I think it makes sense for Arsenal to go for Gyokeres being a proven scorer. There's questions about how well he'll do in the Premier League, and he's not going to be given the space at Arsenal that he would get at a Sporting. He likes to run into space, and there's always questions about that, and we'll go into that in more detail. If you do sign Gyokeres, I will do an analysis video on it. But it does make a lot of sense. You look at the statistics, 42 goals already this season in 42 games, 43 goals in 50 games last season. Arsenal signing Gyokeres, I think it's going to happen. But let's talk about it. So this is your striker shortlist. Gyokeres is most likely. He's proven. He's physical. He's a pressing striker. But there is interest from Barcelona, and PL clubs could complicate the deal. I think you beat Man United to him, because even though I want him at Man United, we're probably not going to be in the Champions League, and Gyokeres wants to go to a top club. Barcelona, I think, is your biggest competition. Sesko, long-term interest, open to move, raw talent, not proven at top, risky for a title-chasing squad. Do you want someone that's more ready now, but could be top? I think it will be Gyokeres or Sesko. Isak, I think, is your dream signing. He's perfect, but I don't think Newcastle will sell. I don't think Isak's that bothered about leaving Newcastle. I don't think it's going to happen. And then you got Ornstein, that I think is admired by club, but I actually think because of wages and stuff, I think if you really wanted him, you would have pushed him when you could have maybe got him on loan last summer. So you didn't. Cunha's been linked, but he's not like an out-and-out striker. He likes to play a bit deeper, and I think that you want an out-and-out striker. Hugo Ekitike, I wouldn't shock me, because Hugo Ekitike is like a Sesko/Isak type player in the sense of he's not fully ready. He could be a risk, but he could be the next Isak, and Isak's what you need. I don't think you'll get Isak. Hugo Ekitike could be the next Isak, but it's a risk. I think Liam Delap, you want someone more ready-made. Jonathan David, I don't think he's proven enough. I think Arsenal look at Gyokeres and they think this guy's proven. I think that's who you'll sign. That's who you're looking at. In terms of midfield targets, apparently there's verbal agreements with Zubimendi. The deal is not like done, but it's very close. There's verbal agreements. 50 million release clause is cost effective. There's been links to Wharton. I think he's a better fit maybe than Zubimendi, but 100 million valuation, I don't think you're going to do it if you can get Zubimendi for 50 million. Bruno Gimaraes would be the perfect signing for you guys, but again, he loves Newcastle. I don't think Newcastle are going to lose Bruno Gimaraes or Isak despite constant links. I don't think they're going to lose them. You have been linked to Lucien Agome, if I've pronounced his name right. I think it would be a very good Thomas Partey replacement. I haven't watched loads of him, but I think, physically strong, a good tactical fit. I think it could make sense for the right price. And then it wouldn't shock me if you went for Hayden Hackney for squad depth if you couldn't get Zubimendi. But these alternative targets is only if Zubimendi ended up going to Real Madrid. And I don't think that's going to happen. I think you've almost got Zubimendi, but if something did go wrong, they're the alternatives. But I think Zubimendi is essentially done. Because David Ornstein said this. On reports linking Zubimendi to Real Madrid, without wanting to discredit the report of others, I personally haven't heard this. Arsenal are expecting Zubimendi to join in the summer. I don't know if it means it's completely done, but for some time now, they have been working on the basis that he will be coming in, and a huge amount of work went into getting them to that point, while Edo was still in position, and subsequently when Jason Ato took over as interim basis. Andrea Berta will be starting soon as Edo's permanent successor, so we will hopefully learn a bit more on other areas in the due course. So Ornstein says Zubimendi, I think he thinks it's done. So, what else are Arsenal looking at? Because I still think Arsenal need a creative player in the midfield, and there was them trying to go for Naipan, which made a lot of sense in the window. Now, Ranieri could potentially be a Odegaard replacement, or even you could have Zubimendi and Rice as pivot players deeper, and Ranieri could potentially be a 10. But I do think I look at Arsenal and they need another progressive passer that's a bit more creative to be in that left 8 role, because I think you've got Odegaard, Ben White, Saka that have made those triangles on the right-hand side last season, which were really good, although Odegaard's dropped off. But I think the left-hand side you've lacked. I think Naipan is more of a right-footed player, but you've targeted Naipan. There's talk of Lewis Skelly being there. But I do think Arsenal might be looking at maybe a young gem, like how Tottenham got Lucas Bergvall, to maybe be an understudy to that role, because I don't think Mourinho is what they maybe needed now thinking of it. Now, last but not least, Nico Williams. Arsenal priority is they're going to get Zubimendi, they're going to get a striker, and then I think it could be Nico Williams. Now, David Ornstein is again confirmed. Mikel Arteta loves Nico Williams. It's long-term admiration. He would have liked to have signed him in the past. It could happen this summer, is what has been said by Ornstein on Nico Williams. I'm going to be honest with you. I think Arsenal will sign a winger. I think Barcelona are definitely in the race for Nico Williams, and I think they could beat Arsenal to him. But he's got a release clause. It's good value release clause considering he can play left and right. I've watched Nico Williams quite a bit this season. I watched him last season and thought it was unbelievable. I watched him in years, thought it was unbelievable. I will say this for Williams, he's so raw. I think the way Nico Williams is spoken about online is if he's going to come to Arsenal and he's going to be this lifesaver and he's going to be amazing. He's still a bit like Martinelli in the sense of he's just raw. His play style's different to Martinelli, and I think he suits. He's got more individualism in Martinelli. But if I was going to be honest, and you Arsenal fans aren't going to like me for this, I would compare Nico Williams to Garnacho. Sometimes he plays and you're like, this is a talent. He's direct. He's impactful. He's always trying to make a difference, and he's great. And sometimes when you watch him play, he has a poor game. His decision-making is bad. His output could still improve. This guy in 2-3 years' time could be an unreal winger, but he's not the finished product yet. I will say that. I think Nico Williams is great. I think he'd be a great signing. But I don't think he is the finished product. I think he's a bit overrated in that sense. And I think if you watch him, you'd maybe see my point. I wouldn't be shocked, and this is just a hunch, if you went for Anthony Gordon. And I feel like Newcastle fans aren't going to like me if they've watched this video, but Isak's not going to happen. Bruno Guimaraes is not going to happen. But I felt if one player was going to leave Newcastle, it would have been Anthony Gordon because of the rumours last summer with Liverpool. And there was some sources suggested he was open to the Liverpool move. And I think he's what Arsenal need. Arsenal needs someone that's going to play on the left, that is direct, that's a transition impact, that can create but also can score, that is good in big games. I think Arsenal lack transition threat. They lack that explosiveness. Nico Williams brings that, and Anthony Gordon would bring that. I think that's what Arsenal need. There has been links to other wingers out there. They were linked to Kubo. I don't think he fits what they need. But I think there's other wingers out there. And I think Nico Williams, you're very heavily linked to him, but I don't think it's a guarantee. I think you're going to get Gyokeres. I think you're going to get Zubimendi. And I think you're going to get a winger. And then I think you might get an understudy. But anyway, this is what we know so far about Arsenal, Andrea Berta, his transfer plans. And I have to say, look, if you get Gyokeres, Nico Williams, Zubimendi, and another young gem in, which is 4 players that Arsenal are looking to bring in, that is cheat code. And Arsenal, unfortunately, could win the league next season if that happens. Arsenal fans, let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching. Bye.